Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another session from the Wise Asylum. All past Christmas now, and still no snow. I'm loving it. It's gotta be good. Interesting week, I have to say. U-turn, or so it would appear, on the old mandatory digital ID. But he's going to have it in by 2029, he does declare. So my guess is they're just going to make things more and more difficult to try and force more and more people into this digital ID. So maybe it's work for the young flea bags who don't know their arse from their elbow, but of course us older bags, we know a little bit more, and we're not prepared to be told what to do when we've already got lots of things that they like to use as ID. Of course, the only ID I have is you're looking at it. That's it, pretty much. So I don't really care. You want ID, you're looking at it. It's talking to you. That's it. It's the only ID you can possibly have. Otherwise, you're entering the little game, the little garbage game. Also, we've got... So we spoke a bit about the ICE nonsense last week. Basically, in my opinion, they're just all psyops. It's clearly not working. Because, of course, what they actually want is for the public to start attacking these ice guys, because then they can strengthen the power that they're going to give to these people. And clearly it's not working. But then just before I come on, there won't come up on the old Facebook. And it were a guy in Just Civvies attacking this guy, black guy, at the back of this RUV. And this black guy's screaming and shouting, "It's ice, it's ice." I mean, clearly they want the American public to start beating the living daylights out of this ice. And so far it's not worked. So I would suggest before this month's end, I would say, they are going to arrange a scenario whereby a pretend member of the public pretends to shoot or kill or seriously injure one of these ice fruit bats, and then all hell will let loose, and they'll give them so much power. The Gestapo will be on the streets. So keep your eyes out for that, ladies and gentlemen, because that's exactly what I see coming down the line. And I would suggest they want to get that in there as early as possible. So my guess is it would be in before the end of this month that they're going to create some fantasy theatre that looks like a member of the public has gone completely lunatic and beat the shit out or shot one of these ice dudes. So just mark my words on that. It's all theatre. The more I've watched of these things, the more clear it becomes to me that it's just theatre. It's utter shit and garbage, and they really are trying to get the public to kick off and do these people some damage. So those are the 2 points I'd just discussed in relation to La La Land at present. Everything else just seems to be pretty boring. We got more defectors from the Tories to the Reform. More calls for Trump to invade the UK. Well, if you've been following the massive amount of special forces and all its equipment that's been piling in on Blighty, with a lot of them seemingly off to the Saudi Arabia peninsula. So they're definitely gearing up for something. There's lots of things coming out from Iran. Claims that they have technology that's pretty much outed a massive network across the country of Mossad. Trump's giving it the big, "Oi, we're on the side of the people." Milikowski's giving it the same, "We're on the side of the people." Of course, the regime itself is completely controlled by the same forces that control Milikowski and indeed Trump. So it's just all theatre again, but I've said this many times before. Russia is just the bogeyman to militarise the Western nations. Iran is going to be the kick-off. Because if they're going to do a nuclear conflagration, my guess is they would do it in the Middle East. Far too dangerous to do it in the West, although I wouldn't put it past them, because of the damage it would actually do to a Western nation, which they're going to be dependent upon for conscription. They're now talking about conscripting up to 65. I'd like to say that's going to work. You're going to try and tell Generation X what to do. Yeah, go on, go for that. I mean, of course, there's a lot of Generation X that have sucking the shit out of the secret societies for pets mean prizes, but yeah, they'll go. Probably send the kids as well. Right, so we're getting... All right, it's me again with this bloody microphone. See, I did turn everything up on the old... See, I'm trying to get it so that it's not in my face and you can't see it, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like I'm going to get away with that. So I'm pretty sure this is a... Hey, can't hear you! Kind of text. Yes, there we go. There we go. See, somebody shouting at me already. Right, is that better? I think that's better now. Right, good. Super. So I do keep trying to play with the thing just to try and get it so that the mic's a bit further down. You can't actually see it. But we can see it, and unfortunately, it's got to be a part of the gig. So never mind. So you can hear me. Where were I? Conscription. Up to 65, I tell you. Good luck with that. Good luck with telling Gen X what they're going to have to do. Because you know what they're going to say, don't you? Kiss my rebel ass. Pretty much what they're going to do. I mean, obviously, the dumbasses are going to go for it. Yes, we'll be on the streets telling them to pick the dog shit up. And the litter and all that malarkey. Don't park on the pavements, and for goodness sake, do not park outside of the lines. Because it's all important stuff. Very important stuff to the nut jobs. But yeah, I'd like to see how they're going to do that, to be honest. But you never know. They're probably going to have a bash anyway. But as I've said, and I've said this all along, the plan is for a nuclear conflagration in the Middle East, or over Iran even. And I still hold to that. You know, Russia, just another bogeyman to militarise the Western nations, which they've been doing, for the last 6 months now. In earnest, I tell you. They've been really giving it some. I mean, my face ache now is just full. Special Forces, Parachute Regiment, Royal Marines, everywhere. It's just full. Full of it all over the shop. So they're really pumping it out there everywhere and just trying to focus people's minds to give us your offspring. We want to send them to war and snot them because Milikowski wants it. Trump wants it. Oh, well, never mind. So, good luck with that, I have to say. You know, and there's still quite a few Gen Xers out there that'll say, no, thank you. Well, unless, of course, they did what they were told in 2020, then there's probably no hope for them. But never mind. Okay. Oh, we've got a few on. That's good. I've got more on if I look at that. I'll tell you what, I'll have a look at it now. Let's see. Let me just... Here we go. Oh, what are they doing? Right, so according to this, right now, we've got 53 on. So, there's a big fibbing going on in between what you're seeing as who's on and what's actually coming through on the real stats, the live stats. So, the imps are in between the live and this. Now, I did test it before. It's not Streamlabs. It's definitely coming via YouTube. So, 77 Brigade or indeed Unit 8500, one of those bunch of Johnny-come-latelys, or interfering in the Wise Asylum. So, that's got to be good news, hasn't it? It just shows that we're pissing them off. We like to piss them off. Now, tonight, or today, let's just say, is a big alignment today. A very, very big alignment. And it's all relative to the old Queen of Heaven there. And we've also, the new moon has popped out an hour or so ago. So it's quite an important day. And we've gone through the moon of the old rebirth of the sun within. And so I thought, given we've covered so many topics now, relative to the subject matter that we're going to discuss tonight, I thought it was time that I actually give you the key, the only one you need, to understanding the gospel. Or more importantly, understanding what garbage is in the gospel. So I'm going to give you the key. And I'm going to let you have it. Because I'm going to trust you that if it's important to you, that you'll understand our position and situation, then you'll take that key and you'll use it. And if you don't want to do, just throw it back over here. It's all right. Somebody else will want it down the line, I'm pretty sure. So that's the subject of tonight's show. The key to the gospel. And even if you've never been interested in the gospel, let's say, when you get this key, you might just be interested in it. Because not having the key has been the key to the nonsense and the fact that 99.9% of people that class themselves as Christians have gone up their own ass. And it's not just for Christianity, in truth, because the same format has been used in everything. The three religions have all been turned asunder on comprehension of interpretation. And so I'm going to start it by saying that we're going to use this symbolism. Okay, the symbolism is you either see that you have your cup is half full, okay, or your cup is half empty. Now, that's a perspective. And if you'd actually contemplate it, it's a very deep, very deep phrase, in truth. Because the core foundation of the elites that have existed for aeons, collected everything unto themselves, and then have spent their entire lives down here keeping it and expanding it, is because they see the world from a glass being half empty, and therefore they need more. They need more than they have. Once they get more than they need, they want more. Then they start to realise, oh, we have control here. Now we have to secure this to make sure that nobody pinches it off us. And away it goes, until eventually they realised they needed to protect that system. We need kings. Okay, they were all told not to do it in Samuel, but were given Saul because they wanted it. And that created a wall between the glass being half full and the glass remaining half empty. So there's the symbolism that we're going to use in relation to the difference between the duality in man. Now, we have covered, have we not? I have presented to you my understanding on what 666 really means. Now, we've tied it to the 3 lower chakras, to the cube, which gives us the 6. So that's if you want to play numbers, okay? Which is what most people understand or comprehend in relation to 666. We know that the phrase in the Bible has been played with because it speaks of him and his. Naturally, everybody assumes it's one man, but actually, it's actually the number of a man, meaning a particular type or expression of man. So when I went through the 666 on Cuban number, what I did is present it in the idea that it's a prison or a sort of a loop in which you are stuck beneath the heart, and therefore you're not actually picking up the frequencies above the heart. So that's a throat chakra, third eye, vision, and then of course your crown chakra, which is pulling in the higher frequencies. So there's no mix at the heart that's inclusive of the higher chakras. You're fixed in the root, which is survival, so Judaism. Then you have the sacral, which is all about the sexual energy, and of course the doctrine for that is Islam. And then of course you've got the solar plexus, which is the will of the sun, the sun's energy as your will, and Christianity. So you've got the 3 religions fixed into that lower nature, and it's the 3 chakras that are basically functioning to keep the biology or the avatar alive, nourished, and to procreate, to keep making more of the same. So there's the basic 3 baser chakras. Now, they're no less important, let's say, than anything else, but from within those chakras, you're only basically fixed into mammon or materialism or the world, you might say. Now, all 3 of those religions despise paganism. Of course, what is paganism when you get to its root? It's the system that keeps you connected to the earth. So not the world, the earth, the rhythms of the earth. So the cycles of nature, spring, summer, autumn, winter, etc. Cycles of the moon and also the sun. There you are in tune with the clock, you might say, of the earth. Now, given to actually incorporate that into your existence, then you would have to be aware and at least functioning in the awareness of the frequencies above the heart. Okay? You would have to be. But fixing you below the heart into those 3 chakras, 666, which is a version of man, which they call the human, you are not in sync with the earth, and the doctrines or the interpretations of doctrine in those 3 religions fixes you to the world by refusing to allow you to acknowledge the frequencies that would put you in tune with the earth. And they call it paganism. So there you've got it. Earth, world. 666, a version of a man, a limited man. An imbalanced man. So it's a shade of man, as they call it. And also, because of its actions, human can be transferred to be defined as a monster. So we've discussed that, or I've discussed that with you in the past. I've gone through it in detail. And we've also looked at the fact that the Bible itself has two meanings, dependent upon the interpretation. Now, I've also spoke of the fact that from the moment you're born, if your mother and father are immersed in this shade of man system, or the matrix, because it's a fixed system, you're fixed below the heart, it's a matrix, and people are stuck in it. And if you break free from it, the people stuck in it can only see you as, oh my God, they're broken, they're damaged, they're not like us anymore, they're not doing what we do, they're not believing what we believe, and they're not putting up with the nonsense that we put up with. They must be broken. So that's the attitude. Just in the same way as drinkers like to be around drinkers. They're on the same level. They laugh at the same jokes. And stoners like to be around stoners because they laugh at the same jokes. They think on the same vibe. And it's birds of a feather. And that's the way it works in that lower system, the matrix system of man fixed to materialism. Because it's just the 3 F's if you want to be expletive, but it's basically feed, fight for survival, and procreate. Okay, so those are the 3 basic tenets of the biological system or avatar that we inherit in order to exist on this plane. So that's a few ways that we've explored this schism, this imbalanced version of man. Okay? Now, the Bible. We have looked at the fact that the priesthood, the word wizards, who basically came from Babylon, installed themselves in the Levant to create the second temple, which then moved to control the tribes in that area that followed the Mosaic law, or the laws of Moses. We've gone through all that as well, haven't we? So there's a separation between the power structure and the people that follow the doctrine. And we know that the laws that the priesthood follow have absolutely nothing to do with the biblical score whatsoever. It's the Talmudic law, the Zohar, and it's all been pushed together and haphazardly in the Mishnah. So and from which we have this inverted Kabbalah. Okay? So we know that they're separate. It's Babylon, the imperial, enforcing its will into the Levant because it was a pivotal point of trade between Africa, Europe, and Asia. And of course, the representation of civilization in that area in those days was Egypt. All tied as remnants of Atlantis, and the main centre of it outside the Mediterranean was Albion, perhaps with the Hyperboreans up there in the northern quarters around the North Pole. But the priesthood itself, the civilization that was being preached, lived and educated across Europe, was pretty much centred on Albion. But in the Middle East, the representation of that same civilization was Egypt. So Egypt had to act, and a lot of problems came about to Egypt as this bunch of fruitcakes from Babylon area invaded Middle Egypt and stayed there for quite a long time. Shepherd Kings, Hyksos, Abraham, circumcision, cutting your willies off, all this malarkey. Not circumcised heart, which means open. You know what I'm saying? And basically overtook the old doctrine and divided it. Now, one of the main ways that they've actually continued that division and to basically blag everybody, is in the interpretations from the Hebrew. Now, if you take the Bible as a whole, you can basically see that there's some parts are interpreted correctly from Aleph, and many parts are interpreted from Beth. Now, that isn't the way the Hebrew works. People might say, or scholars would say, yes, but we do it. Oh, yes, you do it now, but that's an aberration on the actual way the Hebrew language operates. So we know you've done it, and we know you've done it now for a reason. It's to create a two-layered version of biblical doctrine. One formed from the doctrine itself, which was the Mosaic law, then it came through the gospel, and of course this aberration, which is, no, we control it all because we had the oral law, and here's what it really means. So you've got the glass half full, which is the people that were looking forward and reckoning with the fact that there is an higher force, there is a path of becoming one with the Father. Your cup is always half full because you're always seeking to better yourself, and your intention is it'll always be better, not necessarily materialistically. Whereas the glass half empty brigade never got enough. They've never got enough. The more they get, the more they need, the more they want. And of course, then they have to create systems everywhere, not only to protect it, but to make sure that they don't lose it, and are constantly expanding it. So all these formats are the interplay you can see in how they've played man as a biological and maybe spiritual system. They know this knowledge, and they've manipulated it to their ends to keep you fixed in that lower nature, and you looking at the world as the glass is half empty, and always scrambling for more, which means you have to move with these elites in this game for the pets means prizes, and there you are on the merry-go-round, sucking the shit out of the ass of these people for the little tidbits that they might throw at you. Okay? For the majority of people, that just means you get a job. They'll work you to death. You'll teach your children the same, and that's a nice cycle that they've got going, constantly producing new slaves to constantly keep their system going. Things might change now and again when technology changes or they get new ideas and such, but in the main, they're programming you from the minute you go to school, or even the minute you're born, because your parents are teaching you. And as soon as you go to school, you're being prepared to be another slave. You get a choice to some degree as to what avenue you want to be a slave in. And if you really want to perfect it, then you'll go on to university. You'll take the copy, and then you paste that copy to everybody and all and sundry that you know, because you believe it's real. So that's basically the world. That's how the world works. It's a closed system, and they don't like anybody escaping from that system, especially if you escape from it and start telling everybody else. They don't like it. So that's what we had in the Middle East. We had Babylon as an oversoul to the original biblical Old Testament doctrine, the Mosaic law, which we know has come out of Egypt, and it all comes out of Egypt. And they transferred it to themselves, made it them, created their own patriarchs in their version, and everything was hunky-dory. They had control of all the tribes. Everybody's happy. They're making plenty of shekels. It's all going spiffing until, along comes this geezer. This geezer called Yeshua. Yeshua, he's called. It wasn't called Jesus, by the way, which is Jesus, which is Zeus, is it not? So we can now look at it and say, okay, so there's two versions of this system. One that serves the Babylon, and one that's trying to get you to raise your game, improve your lot, and synchronizing with the actual creator. Now, the Bible misnomers it all in Genesis 1, because that particular part is defined through the false use of Hebrew and begins with Beth, which cancels out the creator of the Elohim and presents Genesis 1 as the Elohim creating the heavens, the earth, the blah, 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 blah. Very clever stuff. But obviously, if you're fixed in the lower system, you're a shade of man, it's going to work for you, especially given the edit they've given you throughout your childhood. If you've carried it on yourself, the priesthood have given it you every week when you went to church, you went to Sunday school, wherever it is you go, it's cemented in your head. You need us external to you if you want to raise your game and reach the heavens, the Father, and this funny fella that they've stolen, completely turned into a pantomime, and they call him Jesus. Okay? So that's the world side, and that's how they've depicted that. Yet, when you actually look at the words of the man. Now, I have said for quite some time that personally, if I'm looking at the Bible, I will go to the Geneva Bible. Because it's way more in sync with Yeshua than the King James could ever be. Now, if you go online to the Geneva Bible, what you'll find is a plethora of fruit bat interpretations telling you what it means, which what they're actually doing is trying to shift the Geneva Bible in sync with the King James Bible, which is the corporate Bible, the hellhole Bible, you might say. Because it sanctions all this corporate garbage, the statutes, etc. And you've to ignore that, because if you pollute your mind with the interpretations, you're going to revert back to what you think you already know, because that's what you've been programmed. It's always on you. It always is, and I've said this before. It's the reprogramming and training of your subconscious that's the game. That is the spiritual game. You're undoing everything that's been put there since you were year big, a zygote, because you were listening to your mum and pa even when you were a little zygote. So it's really important that people grasp that. That is the spiritual awakening. That is the spiritual journey, and it's not easy. Which is why most people will be happy to stick in Mammon and follow the Fruit Bat Brigade. Well, good on you, that's fine. But if you're serious about this game, because you fully know that you'll be coming back anyway and doing it again, well, at some point, in some time, at one moment, you're going to have to make that choice and decision and follow that path. Why not have a bash now? You can only improve yourself, can't you? So we have a division. We have the shade of man from the original creation required to keep the matrix that keeps these elites who are never satisfied in the seats of abundance. They own the world, they can travel the world, they can do what they want. And the whole system, in that sense, is fixed around ensuring that they remain in that position. No, it doesn't matter what they think, what they believe. The simple fact of the matter is, the source of their insanity is a perspective of looking out at the world with an half-empty glass. And so they're always feeling they need more, collect more, just in case, they need what. This is the mindset, and it is a perspective. But it is a perspective that's coming from within you. And it's born of the fixation and trap of existing below the heart, not allowing that energy to raise and rise above the heart, pick up the higher frequencies, and then mute and balance itself in the heart itself. Now, you could say that due to that fact that greed is a sort of a reference point as to looking into those kind of people. Greed. They need more than they need. They want more than they have. They're never satisfied. And so, in reference to the 666, or a version of man, the shade of man, you're looking then, in a sense, at the idea of the 7 deadly sins.
kind of thing as reference points to show you where you're actually at. Okay, so not satisfied, always wanting more, totally fixed to that material world because you're trying to keep yourself free from fear. You're trying to ensure you can procreate, and you're making sure you can consistently feed your biological system with its sex, with its power from the solar, and of course the fear that's born in the root chakra of survival. Which is why these uber fruit bats want the world to themselves. And so the whole system that they've been building for all these aeons has been to give them the world to themselves, because they can't settle, they can't relax, they can't function with other people, because they're so debased, they're so far off any idea of balance that they can never mix. They cannot be like man, because they're not. And that is the source of the world. It is the source of the system. And most people are fixed in it. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because you listen to any religious people, and all they speak about is a Trinity. The Son of God. Is he the Son of God? Is he not the Son of God? Well, you know my idea on God. It's the most ridiculous word that you could ever produce, because every idiot and his dog is following his own God. So whether he's a pervert, it's his God. If he's a thief, it's his God. If he's a murderer, it's his God. We might call it a demon, but to him, it's his God. So the term God is garbage. It's utter shit. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the Creator, who's hidden well because of the mistranslations of the Hebrew in relation to so much of the biblical script. Now, when you get this key as your key to comprehension and defining an intellectual application to the Bible or anything, you no longer just read words, you study what you're reading. And that is a big difference. And this is why most books, publishers will only accept a book that's in a form of a story. Because it's that and that alone that keeps you reading. Because it's a jolly. You're on a jolly. Study doesn't come into it when you're on a jolly and reading, because you're already excited. It's hitting every lower frequency that needs to be hit to give you the satisfaction, to make you think you're learning something. Now, don't get me wrong, you might learn concepts, ideas, a bit of historical context that you didn't know before, but you're not actually learning anything. You're just expanding perhaps your points of reference when you're looking at history, let's say, or whatever subject matter you're dealing with. But you're actually only reading, and therefore you're actually taking on subconsciously the narrative that the actual author wishes to present. So this is why editors are important in certain cases, especially in media. Journalists might want to give you the story, but the editor's going to edit it, because he's going to edit it to that kind of system, so that people are reading it, they're not necessarily absorbing it. And it's the same with biblical script. And it works because you will read a certain part of the Bible and then the next part will contradict that part. And most people will just not see it. The reading, the program, the picture the world wants to see in reference to that particular part has already been implanted in the subconscious. So you'll read the words, but the image that comes to the third eye would be the program of the subconscious. It's unclean. You're not actually absorbing the words, because when you start to absorb the Bible, you can start to then realize that the contradiction is deliberate. And it's deliberate because it undermines the other. So that the world view undermines the real view. And I did present this in previous live streams, just sort of examples of how that works. So, for instance, I know I use it a lot, but it's the simplest one. You know, Adam and Eve, people see apple. Well, the word apple isn't written any Bible anywhere. It's fruit. But you have that image apple. And it's not just in that sense. We went through the woe unto thee listing of the parts where he giving him woe unto thee. And when you read that, if you read it from the Bible itself, you can see clearly he's admonishing the priesthood who are claiming to be of Abraham, and he accepts Yeshua that they're from Abraham. But then they just add one line in that contradicts everything you've just read. And so once you start to study rather than read, these are the points that start to stand out to you. And it's a conundrum until you recognize that that's deliberate. Because if you're not focused, if you're not real and applying your own intellect and discernment to what it is you're studying, then you're just following. You are still the sheep. Yeah, you're copying. And you've made no attempt to reprogram the subconscious for whatever reason that may be. But it's down to laziness, basically, isn't it? It's far easier to follow, do as you're told, blah, 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 like the baby boomers, the generation that were told, loose-lipped sheep sink ships, do as you're told. That, with their offspring, Generation X, we don't like being told what to do, unless you're weak, and there's a lot of them in Gen X that were weak. But in the main, most of Gen X don't like being told what to do. So mothers and fathers loved it, and then tried to tell us, and we just like, oh, I don't think so. Or, all right then, but we go and completely do the opposite. And that, again, is another way that they work this programming in order to remove the connection between mother, father, offspring. And they do it all through. If you go through the sociology of, let's say, last 100 years, you can see that in play. One generation gets one program, their offspring get another, and it just creates a divide. And once they got culture, pop culture, celebrity, magazines, television, it just became a very easy game to pre-program the generations between offspring and mother and father, and to take them off kilter. You've no continuum then. You've no passing on of the knowledge. Dividing the family is another. Losing touch with grandma and granddad is a very important part of demolishing the family unit, because they carry the knowledge. You know, and it's been perfected, and we are now at the point where it's succeeded. It's no point pretending it hasn't. It has succeeded. Very few people today understand the responsibility that it is to procreate. You know, oh, well, I didn't really want to. It's poor me. I must go and get drunk. I must carry on being a prick. Or a mother says, well, I'm not happy. I'm going to kill it. That's a loss of responsibility for procreation. And that's, again, just a symptom of this breaking down of the family and morality, which is essential for the world. Because the West was built in the earth, on the earth, which is why so many of these freaky cultures, such as Judaism or Rabbinical Judaism and Islam and Protestant Christianity, which is completely Zionized, sees everything else as pagan. Anything that's in tune with the earth, it's pagan, kill it, burn it if it's a woman. It's a sick mindset. It sounds nothing, but when this kicks in, when these pillocks start to do this, it's a sickness. They don't know they're sick. They think they're pagan. They never sat down and actually analysed what does the word pagan actually mean. They've never even given it a thought. Never. But that is exactly what it means. In tune with the earth. Now, the word pagan might not mean that, but what they're referencing when they call people pagan is people that are in tune with the earth. Not the world. It won't do for the world, will it? They can't have that. And history is loaded with them killing everybody and anybody that was still in tune. Even languages had to be destroyed because they were more in tune with earth and not the world. Native Americans, Gaelic speakers, ad infinitum. It goes on all over the show. And they've been implemented this one particular language called English. Because for word wizardry, it's amazing. And anybody that studied the law, there's your example of that. It's so convoluted. It's a minefield, just trying to understand your own language. And once you start to realise that you don't, that's when you start to make headway. It's not a simple game. But studying law is the perfect method to show you just how much wizardry has been fixed into the English language and why it is the language that they want across the world, because it is the language of the world. So at all points you can see that this is what's been going on. Now, when we went back through the times of the Second Temple and then its destruction, just by following what really went on and the fact that once the temple had been demolished, because the source of his teaching had come from Albion, initiated by the real Druids before they became the Druidists, not only was this Babylonian priesthood cross with the tribes that had seen the Second Temple's game, not only did they despise the Romans for destroying the temple physically, they also wanted to go back to its root and destroy and pluck out the root of it, which they did on England when the Romans invaded, because by that time the Caesars were gaining power. The Republic was no more. Previous to that, the Druids educated all the Republic elites of Rome's offspring. Because you could say Western Europe, including Albion, you could even say Egypt to a point, were all connected. And they were classed as civilization. Same in North America. And in parts of South America. I mean, history's wiped that off. Everybody were a savage and we've been evolving them. But no, it's utter nonsense. It's always been this imperial bunch of fruitcakes from the East implanting itself over civilization. So, temples destroyed. The priesthood were in a mess because they'd no temple, which meant they'd no power over these tribes anymore. Then they have this fantasy called, we must gather the tribes of Israel back to us because we're the big cheese dicks, because we're the house of Judah. It's all there when you just give it a little bit of thought. Just contemplate it. And, you'll know them by the fruits. You don't even have to get too far into linguistics of it. You just need to look at, look, who are these people? Well, look at what they're doing in Palestine. Look what they did in Cambodia. All these places are mass genocide. This is them. And what we know as Rabbinical Judaism was formed after the destruction of the temple. It didn't exist before then. It was the followers of the Mosaic Law. We know it as the Torah. They knew it as the Tanakh. We call it the Old Testament. They were all following that system. In came the Second Temple from Babylon, said, no, we're in charge, we're bosses, because Moses gave us it in his lug holes. Have to shut the fuck up and do what we say. It seemed to work for quite a long time, until it didn't work, because along came a guy and said, you're being very naughty. He didn't admonish the followers of the Mosaic Law. He didn't admonish anything from the Old Testament. His entire gig was admonishing. He's still in equity, though. He was acknowledging his own equity and acknowledging their equity, meaning He knew he could decide what he wanted to do, but he also acknowledged that they could decide what they wanted to do. It didn't mean he had to agree with it. Where he got cross was the fact that they had invaded the other side, the good side, and were screwing it up. They were feeding off it, furnishing themselves with gold and coin and power, etc. He had the right then, in equity, to admonish that fact. He didn't have the right to tell them they couldn't choose to be who they were. This is why a lot of it comes across as parable. It's not. It's a man remaining in equity. Okay, and for all you law seekers out there, this is a major important thing that you all need to recognise. When you sat there going, oh, they can't do this, it's disgusting. They can, because they have a right to choose to do that. Just as you have a right to either follow it, succumb to it, or say, hang on a minute, I'm not having that. I need to find my own way. It doesn't mean you're not going to suffer for it, because they're always going to throw shit at you. Because that's the choice they've made. Throwing the toys out to the pram. That's the attitude these people have. You get me? You don't have to follow that. You have to continue on your own path, because that is your right from the initial trust when you're born down here as a steward of the earth. Or you can choose to follow the world. Your choice. That's equity. You know, when they say free will, I think people just think, yeah, but it can't be really free will. It can't all be my... It's God's fault. The devil made me do it. I mean, that's a cop-out. It's a complete cop-out, because you're not understanding and acknowledging what free will really means. Free will means you drop down here, you're given an avatar, you're dragged up, pumped up with shit, but you have the free will, when you come of age, to make a choice. Do you carry on in Fruitbat Land? Or, if you've got a little bit more about you, and you want to find who you really are, because you know you're not that. And that is a choice that we all make. Now, most people don't even recognise they're making them choices. Excuse me. But it is a choice. That's your equity. That is your equity. So shouting and screaming at the system, the way it's going, you're not acknowledging equity. You're claiming your own, but you're not acknowledging theirs. They can choose to be fruitcakes. They can choose to remain infants. They can choose to continue to see the world with a glass half empty. It's the choice. Your choice is, do you follow suit, or do you continue to follow the path, or that light, that inner light that says to you, your cup is half full. Fill it more. But if you're referencing La Land for the amount of fill in that cup, then you're still referencing and taking your input from outside of yourself. Now, let's go back to the man. Okay? So he did his thing. Rome actually destroyed it. Temple went crazy. Regrouped. Expressed the Talmud, which the man had called the laws of man. That's what he decried in them, that they were following their own laws. They'd made it up, and they were trying to take over everybody else with it. They had to then express and expose to stop the fact that they were operating from a different game, to try and recoup these tribes. At the same time, in order to get back to the root of this system that this man had represented, they were taking over Rome also. Now, England first, over on Blighty first, they did this. Uprooted the Druids, took the knowledge, became the Druids, and became the Druidis, which is the Druids of the underworld. So it's a different game altogether. They're in there, they've got it. Out they come. More games going on. And then you can see that they got it together on Blighty, because from there came Constantine and formed another version of their world system based on the man, and set that up in the east, in Constantinople, in opposition to the church that had been formed in Rome. So we're talking Italy, which did represent Yeshua. So you've got Yeshua, Church of Rome, East, Western Rome. You've got Church of Peter, the world, Babylon, Zeus, Jesus, Jesus in Constantinople. There's your two factions. Now, the East, you look at any historical context, you look at any spiritual context, there's one thing in common. The dark shit always creeps from the East. And when you look at migrations across the world, everybody's always fleeing to the West. Okay, so it could be a route at one point, but just as a paradigm, when you're studying history, it's always that format. Shit comes from the East and everybody's always running off to the West. Well, we got to a point in America where there were nowhere else west to run. Because if you went west again, you were back east. Full circle. Nowhere to run, kind of thing. Now, we can see through the Venetians, through the Mongol horde, etc., Europe was taken over, but through finance. So Western Rome was taken over through finance and usury, the purveyors of compound interest. People call them Jews, they call themselves Jews, but actually it's a much bigger force than that. They've just chosen to use that because one bunch called the Khazars a long time ago decided they would work for them and converted to the system. Nothing Semitic about them, no Semitic ties whatsoever, and genetics proves that. I'm not saying it, genetics actually proves that. Now, I know there's been fudge nonsense coming out for the last 20 years to suggest that actually they were from the Middle East, but actually, if they were, it were the invading forces from the Second Temple that made base in what we know as Khazaria. So they still weren't Semitic. They were the invading force, okay? It's like the Crusades. You know, you've got two forces, neither of which belonged in the Middle East. Islam didn't belong in the Levant, and neither did the Christians. Yet all these, because they were both invading forces to that area, and they went to war. See, invading other nations is not, it never works out in the end, because it's wrong. It's coveting your neighbour's everything, basically, which is why it never works. But that works for the world, because they don't care about who gets killed, as long as they get the land, as long as they get the minerals and everything that's made on that landmass through finance. They're happy. Their statutory system organises it, keeps everything in check, and keeps the money going up and the shit going down. So it is just a mafia. All of it. It's just one big mafia. Now, so Rome's defeated the root of it, which were Albion. They've set up their system now in Constantinople and called it Rome. Because, of course, that is where the Imperial Rome set itself up. The Church of Rome was still in the West, operating in accordance with Yeshua. Because otherwise Marcion wouldn't have given them a massive donation if it were anything to do with anything outside of Luke and Paul. So I've said to you that we could call it the Church of Paul, but actually it probably wasn't called the Church of Paul. What it probably was the Church of the Son of Man. Beware. See, I know this, you know. Everybody has this dichotomy. And I'll say to you, what did he say? What did he call himself? The Son of Man. And they have no idea what it means. Well, that's fine. You're not meant to know what it means. Because there's a key to be had before you understand that concept. And this is what I'm going to give you tonight. Because it's time. It's time for this kind of stuff to come out now. So you've got two options. Yeshua, not Jesus, made it clear he was the Son of Man. And that the Son of Man, being the Son of Man, could forgive sin. Now, in the world, they've projected that out as though one man can forgive somebody else's sin. And they've written it in the gospel. What it actually means is the Son of Man can forgive his own sins because he's reached a point of understanding within himself to recognise where he was going wrong and to not do it anymore. Not do it anymore because he wants to do it and he's desperate to do it, but he's just fighting it, but because there's a serious comprehension took place. Because those higher frequencies have been coming into play and they're balancing at the heart. So there's no battle there in that forgiveness of the sin. It's not even a forgiveness. We just use the term because that's the term we use. It's a fact of recognition of the error and even the mistake if we did it a lot. But you're not fighting it. It's a natural, oh, I won't be doing that again. And I'm talking from experience there. So you don't have to forgive yourself and then constantly battle with that. That's not forgiveness. That's not acknowledging, recognizing, and ceasing. If you're still there going, oh, but I want to bum that little boy, that choir boy. Yeah, but I want to bum that nurse. No, none. That's not forgiveness. That's imbalance. Well, because you're in the world pumping out the wrong shit. You're talking about Zeus's lad. Jesus. So you've got the Son of God, Son of Zeus, and you've got the Son of Man. And people still don't get it. What's that mean? What the fucking hell does that mean? I haven't got a clue. I'm going to tell you. Man. What is man? Oh, it's the image of the Father. Isn't it? So to be the Son of Man is to be the Son of the Father. Not Peter. Not Zeus. Because in Zeus's game, if you're his son, you have to do what he tells you. Or his daughter. Or his prince. Or his Fleabag. No, that fella wants you, well, you will do what I tell you now because I'm the fucking king and I'm sitting on the throne. No. When you're the Son of Man, you're the son of the creative Father who's given you free will. So he's not going to buy you a new car. He's not going to come out and beat guys up when you're getting in trouble. He's not that kind of father. No. To be the Son of the Father, Son of Man, is to be the Son of the Father who sent you down here as a steward to the earth and to pass that on to your offspring to keep the earth intact. People don't do that. The world's gone crazy. So now can you see? Yeshua said, the Son of Man. That's what he was, the Son of Man. The Son of my Father. That man is in the image of. Not the Adam. The Adam is a creation. It's a genetic deterioration of man because they infused man with a defect, didn't they? They called it the rhesus monkey gene because it took man off the seriousness and responsibility of having the free will down here to steward the earth in opposition to all the nonsense. By inserting the monkey gene, it turned man into a lesser man, happy to play out, have fun, and act like a chimp. How easy is that to control from the perspective of the elites that did it? So it's a genetic defect that if you can't surpass it, you're going to be a chimp. Act like you won't think you are. You'll think you're fantastic and amazing. But you're in the bubble. And everybody else that you know is in the bubble. Like the drinkers, like the drinkers. Like the stoners, like the stoners. You feel comfortable. You're in good company because you all think the same. You laugh the same. You take the piss out of the drinkers if you're a stoner. The drinkers take the piss out of the stoners because they're drinking. But you're still in a community. It makes you feel safe. Makes you feel comfortable. And you're all on the merry-go-round. In the 666 version and shade of man. So Yeshua, Son of Man, the Geneva Bible speaks in terms of the Son of Man. What does the King James Bible speak of? The Son of God. Well, there's gods fucking everywhere. Take your pick. Take your pick. And there, ladies and gentlemen, is the key to understanding the gospel. End of Sunday's sermon. Right, who's joined us? Hey, blooming heck. I'm glad I got that out. Right, chops and chopesses. Let's have a look at you. Okay. So now we've got 134 on a minute, not 39. Just so you know. So best behaviour, people. No swearing. No expletives on the Sunday sermon gig. You know the crack. It says evening Sean all. Hope you've all had a good week. And I hope you've had a good week too. Evening upward. John says hello. Hello, John. Frames off in 3 weeks. Well done. Oh my God, you've had it on that long. That's a long time. Oh dear. Paul says, good evening, Sean and fellow mates. Evening, Paul. Mew says, great news upward. Evening, Mew. June says, good evening, Sean and chat. Evening, June. Janie55. Evening, Sean. David, mods, chatters, and lurkers. Good evening to you, June. Or Jane, rather. John says, blessings and a wavy hand. Mr. Jim Drinksky. Okay. Evening, Sean and all. From the West Midlands. Well, good evening to you, Jim. From the West Midlands. Jim Drinksky. Okay, West Midlands. Ooh, won't be Wolverhampton, that, would it, by any chance? Gary Peters, are you behaving yourself tonight? Or are you a bot? Says Buckingham pays well or Wrexham, but Hamlet was okay, but more went ham. Mad too many, Lee the Born exposed. I'm not even going to try and understand that. Jerry says, evening Sean, evening Jerry. Mew says, good morning, afternoon, evening, one and all, Sunday sermon, hello Sean. Evening Mew, how are they doing? Gary says, Abraham Lincoln as a statute for the Romans. Okay, so let's get this right. Gary, are you a real geezer or are you just a bot? Because I have to say, in the past, some of your stuff has looked like you're a bot. But now you seem to be playing properly. We like that. So, well done, Gary. Buckaroo says, Gary, please turn up the mic. Right, says Matrix. Matt's 11A. Yep, I think we've done that. Sorry, girls. I'm always getting told off for that. 56 and fitter than ever and fast as lightning raw. Okay. AMG. Hey, good evening, Sean. Stumpy Jane Rizzler. Mew and all yon mutants. Hope everyone is well. Evening, AMG. Gary says, Chem mists. Oh, yeah, well, that makes sense, that. Matt's 11A, Live the Mics, please turn my... Okay, I've done that. Desktop Geek 73 says, hey, Sean. Oh, you're groovy. Watching from Cornwall. Good evening, Desktop from Cornwall. My favourite part of the old British Isles, I have to say. Especially the surf is good in September. Evening to you, Desktop. Robin 7892 says, sound not good, oh dear. Anthony D. Morse, don't tell me, Iran has got WMDs. Well, someone's coming down line with that, innit? You know what I mean? It's quite ridiculous, to the truth. See, Pedrum's not on yet, neither. Evening, Robin. Evening, Anthony. Jerry says, have you adjusted your volume matrix? Well, I thought I'd turned it up. So I'm always trying to turn it up and move Mark a bit further. But anyway, no, I've hopefully sorted it. All alley cats surround Black Rock like powwow. Alley cats surround Black Rock. Powwow. Okay, not going to sure what you mean. Sound is fine for me, says MG. Thanks, MG. Matt's 1-1A. You must have it on 11. Of course it has to be on 11. Yeah, but it goes to 11. This one goes to 11. What a good film that were, weren't it? When it first come out. I've not watched that for years, actually. But then I were in a band. So I were in all bands then. So it made even more sense. Because I'll tell you now, it's so real in relation to how pathetic we are when we're in bands. When we're riding the wave, the drugs are fine, the girls are there, and it's all rock and roll. Oh, man, you wouldn't believe how pathetic. But the internal nonsense between the band members is just so... It's perfect. It really is. Spinal Tap. Oh, my God. I believe they're making another with the same geezers. So I don't know whether that's going or whether it was just a suggestion. But that might be interesting. But Spinal Tap, back then, when I were in bands, it had been bands had been, 15 years at that time, so I knew him inside out. The laugh we had because you could just see ourselves in it all the time were just ridiculous. Oh yeah, Spinal Tap. You cannot beat it. Thanks for that, Matt. Jerry says, sounds good. Okay, so we're back good there. Bit quiet, but okay for me, says John. Right, okay, that's good. Hebrew. Gary P says Hebrew. His brew. Jerry says, a free hearing aid test going. Oh dear. Some deaf people in here, SMG. Big Keys says Gary. Jerry says AMG's laughing at him. Okay, what? Got full template armor. Oh, there is 0% chance. There is 0% chance. Says Upward. Did you forget to put rest on? Were you scratching your leg? Jerry says. Someone says I said. Oh my God, I'm getting confused now. Paul says, good mics are very directional to eliminate background noise, so you have to speak into them for best results. I know. But the other week I was listening back to one of my things, and you could hear me breath, you could hear me everything. I just thought, that doesn't sound very good. So I've been trying to sort of, anyway, it's there. It's back in front of Gob, so we'll keep it like that. Thanks, Paul. Matt's11 says, I just know about levels and care enough to point out the issue. I can obviously just turn up my local volume and move on, but I'm sure Sean appreciates feedback. You know, absolutely, that's all good. It's all good. I always get told off about it. Steel not tin, says Gary. Right hand like Percy. You're not LFX Reborn, are you, Gary? There is 0% chance I'm fighting for this. That's better, Upward. What happened there? Did you have a Parkinson's outbreak? Got you. You're not fighting for these thieves? No. AMG says, turn your hearing aid up and level then. They tremble. Who does? John says, yeah, true. I have no idea what that's about. 53, but 12 are deaf. 144 now. See, he's fibbing. He's just fibbing all the time. Trumpets of fire. Empty oil, pure omega oils. Yeah, now you're getting somewhere. That's good stuff, that. Electric black goo in feet. Heavy metals comes out with detox pads. Well, you don't even need detox pads. Just stick it in hydrogen peroxide or a cupful in some water. And that will do the same. Why get black goo? I mean, I'm not sure about this black goo, to be honest, anyway. I know when it first came out. I mean, fancy calling it black goo, for God's sake. Is he mocking? I've not seen anything about him for a long time, anyway, but he was obviously a clever guy. He knew a lot of stuff about fungus and that, but black goo? I mean, what? Without a piss take, I think it might have been. Treen says, I shown everyone buffering straight away and volume's too low, even though it's the highest in my telly. Sorry, Treen, it's my fault. I hope you can hear it now. Stag doos and end doos. Gary, what are you playing at? Mew gives it the big lips for Treen. John gives it the hand again. Jerry says, Treen, okay. I Teflon Treen, AMG says. Evening, Sean and folks. DJ from HA, evening, DJ. Excuse me, I need a walking stick. I call it Chipmunk. Says Gary. All right. Right, so I've turned it up now. Treen, I hope you can hear it. Do Tai Chi, good. And well, I was told to do that years ago, and I think it might be time to start. I mean, I've got quite a bulk on, but I don't seem to be able to get it off the waist. But then I haven't been cycling for a while. That usually strips it. We're doing some plastering, that usually strips it as well, so we'll see. Right, Jonathan Hiller. My research this week crossed with sheep farm again, who is huge carton green. BBC dig dark cultist and offer in pharmacological warfare and so much more. I.e. O and Artura Souza. Have a look. Right, I'm going to have to read that again. My research this week, says Jonathan, crossed with sheep farm again, who is huge Carton Green, BBCDG Dark Cultist, and offer in pharmacological warfare. I'm guessing that's what you're saying. And so much more, i.e. O and Artura Saucer. Right, Jonathan, can you expand on what the hell you're saying there, me old China? But welcome anyway. Officer. If you could just try and clarify what that, Jonathan, because I'm pretty sure you're trying to tell me something there. MG says, I think I'm in the wrong chat. It's like a house full of acid users. Mushrooms, not acid, says Jonathan. Is that what you're on and why we can't understand that? Anyway, thanks, Jonathan. Please make some sense with your comments, says Mew. Come on, Gary. You're a bit off the fucking wall, me old China. What? An appointment, says Mew. David Call says, sometimes shroom is the white knight talking backwards. Well, it's a long time since I done shroom, I have to say. I did get the urge last year, but never got around to it. Maybe this year I could do a dream quest. I like a little Slade, says Mew. Too much booze. MG says, come on, feel the noise. Oh my god, yeah. AMG says, for instance, no, now we know what kind of stuff you're into, AMG. We know now. Status quo. Gary Glitter. Innit? That's AMG's gig. Anyway. I'm Morpheus says, is Earth flat or round? From where I'm standing, it's all going pear-shaped. Well, to be honest, and I've said this before, it's like, I've looked at all the data. There's a lot of good data in it, but once you come up with that wall, I thought they've all watched Game of Thrones. And so I'm none the wiser. But more importantly, I'm not sure that spending all my time on is the Earth flat or round would serve me very well. When I stand up, it's flat. If I jump up and down, it's still flat. And if I keep walking, it stays flat. So I'd say it's flat, but who am I? Who am I to know all these things? So I don't really care anyway. Right, Emil says, Jonathan Hiller, I'll pass on your message to the sheep farm boys. So did you understand that? Because I didn't. I need to understand what he's on about. In the world but not of the world, absolutely. AMG says, Loltrine, I remember. They are good lads. Yeah, they are good lads. Jonathan, I've done a gig with them. They're good. And I met them. They're both super guys. MG, you might be right there. What's happened to the chat? They're all on drugs, apparently, says AMG. I'm not wanting to put them in timeout to see if they calm down because I've got no idea what they're going on about. Well, I think we're all in the same boat, Mew, in truth. I'm a 69er, says Jonathan Hiller. Okay, so I'm a 67er. Which means I'm 22 in about 3 weeks. Concurs. MG, I'm defo 69 too. Oh, well, you know. Jane would be, but she can't reach. Jonathan says, I love doing drugs by choice in car parks, but the CJB put stop to that under major, so no way was I taking theirs in supermarket sweeps. I think you might be right, MG. I think there's a lot on here on acid, to be honest. Jane says, that's no reflection on my height. More on your size, AMG, you bad un. Giving Jane grief. Yeah, but I think we might have to organise a boxing match here. Button Mushroom says Mew. Mew will be even busier, yeah. I noticed Paul's not here either, so you're on your own tonight. Let's have a look. Jonathan says, and Maxwell Knight. No, Pedram again, no, absolutely not. Peacekeeping again. I'm quite surprised you have any problems in the Middle East now that they reformed M111 in 2018 to coordinate protection. Funny. M111, no. Update from last week. One engineer accountant remanded in custody. Then pleaded guilty to sexual assault and bailed for sentencing in March. And then, oh, right, yeah, I remember you talking about that. He pleaded guilty, didn't he? Good. You need to attend. No, guilty plea, so just sentencing. They will probably read out the statements, I guess. Okay. Peacekeeping, says Jonathan, you get the tip. Templars let back in the Vatican in Templars. I think Jonathan has a big spelling issue. Earth your speed, darling lad. Gary says, love from Portsmouth. You're back in Portsmouth. Well, how you doing, buddy? You alright? Here's Sam. Jonathan says, who's Carlton Green, BBC, dark occult shitbag? An ex-psychological warfare expert, 1960s, 1970. Carlton Green. So what's that got to do with Dom and Chris? Has he interviewed him or something? Well, there's nothing wrong with interviewing housewives, is there, if you're going to be able to show that they're housewives. So is that what you're saying? That they've something to do with this Carlton Green geezer? Who are you on about? Mute says, Sean, I've not allowed some of Gary Peace and Jonathan's comments. No, Sean, I don't understand what those me neither, mate. I have to say, I don't either. Anyway, never mind that. So, that's that malarkey. So, there were a couple of things that I did have. Let's have a look. So, Argentina have halted the Jerusalem embassy move, which is essential for Noahide, over Falklands drilling dispute report. So, what are we seeing there? Because, of course, Argentina's no rebel. He's been at the wall with that on, giving it the big, hey, up to the Roman wall. So I guess this is obviously going to have an effect on Blighty. They're going to try and force Blighty. And, of course, they're the guys that are going to do it because they've got their own little shitbag puppet, Jimmy Savile's vagina, in number 10. So my guess is there's going to be more hoo-ha over the Falklands that all our lads died in. And were maimed in as concessions are given to Argentina so that they get their embassy in Jerusalem. And just for a bit of irony on the Trump level, Denmark is buying Hellfire missiles from the Pentagon to defend Greenland from the United States, which I thought were quite funny because that's actually happening. That's in the Tech Times. So it's all wind and piss, isn't it? It's just garbage. What are they doing? Just spreading forces into Greenland, I would suggest, because you've got Germans have gone in. They're bigging up the Viking Scandinavian influx. And as I said, it's all militarisation, this is... If they hit Iran, they're expecting China to get involved, you see. And the northern hemisphere is pretty open from Russia. So, again, that's what I see is going down. So, human being, just to give an idea of... as an add-on from what we were talking about before, and I'm not sure what the source is, but I think Gumshoe put this up today. From the Latin, humanus equals lesser inferior man or woman defined legally as an animal and or monster, as distinct from the ancient pre-Vatican Roman term homo equals man. A key rule of law from the 14th century describing a fundamental legal fiction that is the notion of an inferior man or woman as an animal, as defined by papal decree, and therefore not subject to the laws of free men, but the laws of property. The decision to create a second word for homo, or man, denoting an inferior animal, man, was crucial to the legal implementation of the Vatican global slave trade from the 14th century to overcome the questions of legality and morality of the Vatican slave trade. Therefore, unbaptized indigenous populations were legally defined as humans. So obviously this is before they defined everybody as a human. Therefore, animals. Legally, the name of a human must always be in capitals to identify that individual as property, as distinct from a free man. So there we go on the birth certificates. All caps. All your bills are coming in on the all caps. The original definition can be seen at http1evil.org glossary legal terms glossary h.ht So you can have a look at that yourself if you like. What else did I have? So here's something I did on Facebook a few weeks ago, I think. And I thought this would be a much easier method of disrupting the system somewhat without everybody having to stop work for a week. But if we thought about it, a real method to upturn the electronic system would be for millions of people to cancel all standing orders in the same month or in 1 month. So we'd have to choose the month. Just for 1 month. Then the month after, reinstate the standing order or direct debit. The system would malfunction with the vast amount of arrears and the cost would be astronomical. Just 1 month for 1 month of failed payments. And it would cause absolute chaos for all the right reasons. If everybody did that in 1 month, can you imagine what that 1 month's failed payments en masse would do to the system, to the corporations? Yeah, to these collectors of council tax, etc. For me, that would be a much easier method of everybody working in sync together. But because of the fact that you're going to reinstate the direct debit to standing order the month after, you've only missed 1 month. And everybody's only missed 1 month. How would the system deal with that? It wouldn't, would it? But it'd cost you an absolute fortune. And it'd cause absolute hell for that 1 month of failed payments on everything. And so that would be something that I would suggest we start to consider as a bit more realistic, let's say, than trying to get everybody en masse to stop working for a week, stop purchasing for a week, staying in for a week. I mean, that's not really going to manifest, is it? Because people need everything they've got. But doing that, you're not losing anything. You're not losing time off work. You're not shopping. You're just not paying every direct debit standing order for 1 month and that we all did it at the same month. That would cause absolute chaos. And not only that, you wouldn't need to protest, you wouldn't need to sit and strike, nothing. But if we did that once, then as people, because that's what we need to come back to, we could stand up and say, scrap your digital ID and we'll do it again next month. Scrap your removing coin or we'll do it again next month. Stop fucking around with our money in the banks or we'll do it again next month. Ad infinitum. And because these governments represent corporations, it's the governments that we could force to our will in the same manner as given to us in Magna Carta. Lawful rebellion. Because it's not a law to pay your direct debit. It's not a law to have a direct debit set up. The fact that the corporations now only accept direct debits it's not incumbent on you to do what they want. You really need to consider this because it's so easy from our perspective. Yeah? But think of the power. As a people, we would pull to ourselves, we would give ourselves Magna Carta power in an instant. Because we can just keep threatening this and doing it when they don't play along. Yeah, we can everything that they're doing that's garbage, we could use that function to force them back to nation, back to pound sterling, back to proper banking. And if the banks can't want to do it, then we could force the government to open a national bank that we control through this mechanism that will do what we want, that's not tied to the central bank system, that's our money. We could force them to renationalise the energy companies. We could give ourselves Magna Carta in an instant, just with that method. It's so important that you've got to give it some consideration. The power in that tiny little move. This is the thing. The governments represent policy. Their policy is all about servicing the corporations, because the corporations are now in private public partnerships. The governments are bending over backwards to those contracts. Those contracts are not mutually beneficial, i.e., to we, the people. They are not to our benefit. They're to our detriment. And the fact that they've been signed off by people that are supposed to serve us, but because they don't, of course, they don't have a leg to stand on. Because we haven't agreed. We only have agreed because we've paid it. But it was information we had no knowledge of, that we now are in full knowledge of. There is a method to take back full power as a people and force these governments to our will again. It's, I put it up on the Facebook, and there were only, I think, one person took it seriously. Well done, that girl. I don't think people have recognised the power in that. And that was just an epiphany I had when I was listening to somebody talking about everybody for a week, don't do this. That is not going to happen. Be real. And my guess is the people that are putting that are the same people that are connected to all this shit show, Tommy Robinson, all these garbage fruitcake shills that everybody now started to wake up to, who were all one big group controlled by, you guessed it, the PCIs. Think about it. The power. You see, you're turning on to them all the shit that they've tried to create to give them the power over you, which is they won't accept cash for payment. They want direct debit. I know I've used standing order there. It's because it's that long since I'd have any that kind of nonsense attached to my banks. Back then, they were called standing orders. I've been put right that they're actually called direct debits now. But somebody suggested you can't stop them. Of course you can stop them. Hey, what nonsense. Have you not done internet banking? You can cancel all your direct debits in your own bank. And if not, you go into the bank itself. If we started to promote this idea, get people to really focus to its depth. Yeah? It's so important. Just that. We don't have to do hardly anything. But the power, if as a people we started to operate in that manner, and the same month we all decided we're cancelling the direct debit. We do that, we see what garbage it causes, and then we say, look, we're going to do this again in 2 months' time. If A, you don't get rid of this digital ID. If B, you don't turn off all these cameras. B, we go back to the highway and get off the road. So that you're not... C, the police become constabularies again and subject to the 9 principles of law. The power in that, if we did it en masse. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it bailiff. They couldn't do it court. They couldn't do it police. There isn't enough of them, and you don't even have to get off your backside and out of your pajamas. It really needs to be grasped by everybody. The power. Magna Carta, there it is. Magna Carta in 2026. And this just isn't here on Blighty. This is China, India, Europe, America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, et al. Everything is in that paragraph. It just needs people to start to comprehend it. Obviously, it'd take, let's say it took the first 6 months of this year to push this about everywhere. You don't have to push that piece that I've put up, just the idea, however way you wanted to do it. This needs to be thought about properly. There's Magna Carta, and you don't even have to get off your ass. It's really, people are really, this is why people are so off the wall. This is simplicity at work. This is simplicity. They built up this mammoth system, depending 100% on your compliance. On your own as individuals, they've got power to attack you, take from you, imprison you. But en masse, that format is huge. It's ridiculously massive. But it needs you out there to start to formulate this in the way you present it and start pushing it. Just keep pushing it. If we all keep pushing it, it will eventually become a part of the internet. And maybe in the second part of 2026, we can do our first use of it. We can actually use it. Because, once they completely control finance, I'm pretty sure they could turn the function off to stop you doing it. But I just, only one person, only one flossy grasped the importance of that. Nobody else did. And I found that rather sad. Because that is dynamite. What a method of operating Magna Carta. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. But I'll have to leave it in your good hands because so far nobody's picking it up. Jerry says, and I see in some Sham's interpretation from one of the Bible New Age or something, Adam meant human. Yeah, they're completely changing it now to this new script. They've got dinosaurs for the creation story for kids. You know, they've really gone to town. People have just missed this. I mean, how many adults love dinosaurs? I think it's real. Because they're still infants, you know? I mean, when they were doing this at the beginning and they were spending millions, BBC, on dinosaurs, I wasn't on the internet. I was doing this in physical writing, and then I'm delivering it to all these councillors and MPs. And I were going on about this then. So it's not like people didn't know. I've been putting this stuff out for years. But dinosaurs is the new creation story so that they can get the Bible gone. Because there's no rights then whatsoever. You're under Noahide. You know, and people are still busy playing with themselves. Nothing I can do about that. If people want to play with themselves, play with yourself. That there is Magna Carta. You don't have to get off your ass. You don't have to get out your pajamas. We can force the government to our will by making this a function of the people. And I know it's so simple and so easy that I just know most people are just not going to take it on. Because everybody wants it to be complex. Because they believe they're clever and that it has to be complex. Otherwise, they'd have thought of it. And it's so easy, guys. It's so easy. But you've got to see it. Where are we now? Right. I don't know what MI11 is, Jonathan. I don't think any of us do. I know, as the church could offer cheaper banking services independent of the state. But alas, the two clubs work together. Well, this is why there used to be separation of church and state. This is why it was so important. Whereas this is the problem with Islam and the problem with rabbinical Judaism. There is no separation. The bank is the religion and the religion is the bank. Yeah, this is why the West civilization can never accept either. Protestantism, well, they got took way off the track a long time ago. This is the problem. There's no separation of church and state within rabbinical Judaism and Islam. And this is why it can never wash in civilization. But I get your meaning there, Alex. So, yeah. Well, I mean, the way that we're moving with this reversion system is very in sync with that you've presented. Jerry Sunamick says, remember also, Sean, they put out the world they want for us to manifest. Precisely. So following these psyops and ICE, this Greenland thing, following Russia scare, what's going on in Iraq, it's all theatre. There are no separate governments anymore. There's no separate intelligence agencies anymore. There's no separate militaries. All the militaries are funded and controlled by the military-industrial complex. It is theatre. All the world is a stage. You know, and you know, anybody watching these live streams, you're watching these live streams because you can see through the garbage. You can see through the shit, you know? And I'm happy with that. I don't care that we haven't got 14 billion people on. It doesn't matter. It's not 14 billion people that are going to change the world. It'll be 7 to 8% of people working together. And that, there, is the Magna Carta for 2026. That's what it is. Mew says, people don't see... Where is that? Shut up. People don't see what we see, Jerry. They just say, oh, that's the way it is. Yeah, exactly, they do, because they're pathetic. They've no sense of self, and they're so dependent on the system that they can never leave it. So it says, Jonathan, I forget that. You may have good intentions, but 5G of muck. Else you talk nonsense, bud. I think you might need to get rid of them geezers. They're talking out their arse and just ruining live stream, to be honest. Get rid of them, you. We don't need them. Where am I? I can probably do it for you. Okay, so... Jerry says, MI5, MI6 formed a new group. Okay. Clash City Rockers. Is that what they're called? Chris Steiger says, it's the prosperity gospel. Hell no. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If I think I know what you're saying there, but... Second World War Intelligence Agency. What? No, it's a separate entity. Where are we here? Okay. Right. Exactly. Even defend it crazy. Tranquil 316 says evening. Evening Tranquil 316. Right, so I'll tell you what I did have, because I were meant to do them. I meant to do this the other week, so just so that it's up there. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, but you know, I've been speaking about the fact that when you look in history, you can see clearly that in different times and parts, you've got these darker skinned people pulled in, either as kings or as power brokers. And if we look at Arthur Tudor, the actual firstborn son of Henry VII, who was named Arthur because Henry and his family at the time were very into King Arthur stories, claiming Welsh ancestry. And there's Arthur, a ginger. Yeah. Nothing like Henry, because Henry looked more like a Moor in some of his original images from when he was a child. And so Arthur, Prince of Wales, the lost heir of the Tudor dynasty. Arthur, Prince of Wales, 1920 September 1486, 2nd of April 1502, was the long-awaited heir to the newly found Tudor dynasty. As the eldest son of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, his birth symbolised the union of Lancaster and York after decades of civil war. Now, you see, this is why I see that Arthur were killed. They created this joint between Henry VII and Elizabeth of York to sideline all the crap that had gone on with the Stanleys implementing the Tudors on behalf of the House Palavicini. And they did that by him marrying Elizabeth of York. Now, the offspring from that marriage was Arthur, not Henry. Henry looked like a Moor. When you look at that, you can't find them on internet anymore. But in the books that I used to read, Henry looked like a black Moor, right? Not these images that we have. So, in my opinion, once they'd settled everybody on this joint of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, and then gave the offspring, which kept everybody happy, they killed Arthur and put in this arsehole that would then divide England and start to demolish the office of king. So from infancy, he held the titles Duke of Cornwall and Prince of Wales and Earl of Chester, and many contemporaries believed Arthur would lead England into a new era of stability, and he probably would. Now, there's another thing. Henry and Arthur probably never even saw each other because they were brought up in completely different courts. Again, another sort of sign that Henry had nothing to do with the marriage of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, and that he was a pretender, but a powerful one because of what he did. He was just a murderer, psychotic psychopath. At Winchester, just after 1 a.m. on 20 September 1486, a very special baby boy was born. This baby was the first Tudor prince, Arthur Tudor. His parents, King Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, were delighted to welcome the first child. Arthur was born after 8 months of pregnancy. A prince designed for greatness. Even as a child, Arthur was at the centre of international diplomacy. Before his 3rd birthday, plans began for his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, daughter of the Catholic monarchs of Spain. The match promised a powerful Anglo-Spanish alliance. At age 11, Arthur and Catherine were formally betrothed. Henry VII and Elizabeth of York had been married on the 18th of January, 1486. Once the marriage contract was signed, the bride and groom were legally wed and made free to enjoy conjugal love. His parents chose the symbolic name of Arthur in honour of the legendary King Arthur, whom Henry claimed to descend from. You see, there were a lot of hoo-ha with what was going on back then, and these are the ways that they managed to sort of calm it down. The birth of their heir to the throne was enthusiastically celebrated. Bonfires were lit in the streets, and the singing of the Te Deum rung out at Winchester Cathedral. When Arthur was 2 years old, he was betrothed to Catherine of Aragon. Catherine was the youngest daughter of the powerful Spanish sovereigns Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon. Over the years, Arthur and Catherine of Aragon wrote to each other often. Arthur spoke no Spanish and Catherine very little English, so they wrote to each other in Latin, a language they both learned. Now, Abe Finkelstein tells us all about what Latin is and what language it is. Arthur received an exceptional humanist education and grew up as a model Renaissance prince, intelligent, devout, and expected to rule. In November 1489, 3-year-old Arthur was created Prince of Wales. In 1492, so this is when Columbus and all this hoo-ha's going on, when he was 6 years old, Arthur was sent to live at Ludlow Castle in the Welsh Marshes. It was customary for a Prince of Wales to actually reside in Wales. Arthur grew up to be unusually tall for his age and was considered quite handsome. He had reddish hair, small eyes, and a high-bridged nose. Arthur had a gentle personality, was thoughtful and reserved, and was considered a delicate lad. He was carefully educated and studied hard. When Arthur reached the age of 15, he was considered old enough to be married. His Spanish princess was sent for. 15 years old Catherine of Aragon arrived from Spain in 1501. She was a sweet-faced pretty girl with wide blue eyes in a round face, and a fair complexion and beautiful red gold hair. Although quite short in stature, her imperious personality made up for any height she lacked. Little has been recorded about the couple's first impressions of each other, but Arthur did write to his parents-in-law that it would be a true and loving husband, and later related to his parents that he was immensely happy to behold the face of his lovely bride. Arthur and Catherine were married in a magnificent wedding at St. Paul's Cathedral on the 14th of November, 1501. See, St. Paul's has always been important here before Peter. What followed in the evening is the only public bedding of a royal couple recorded in Britain from the 16th century. The bed was sprinkled with holy water, which after which Catherine was undressed, veiled, and laid in the bed. Arthur, in his shirt with the gown cast about him, was escorted into the bedchamber by his gentleman. The Bishop of London blessed the bed and prayed for their marriage to be fruitful, after which the couple were left alone. Arthur returned to Ludlow Castle with his young bride. During the spring, an epidemic of sweating sickness was rife in the area. Victims of the sweat would experience delirium and intense heat, which felt as if their blood was actually boiling. They would sweat so profusely that it soaked through the bedclothes. Both Arthur and Catherine contracted the deadly disease. Catherine had recovered, but sadly Arthur died at Ludlow Castle on the 2nd of April 1502. He was 6 months short of his 16th birthday. Grief at court. The news reached Henry VII on the 4th of April. Awakened and told of his son's passing, the king broke down in tears. He and Elizabeth of York comforted one another, but Elizabeth herself collapsed in grief soon after. Arthur's funeral was a grand and solemn affair. His body was taken to Worcester Cathedral, where he was buried beneath the newly built Chantry Chapel. Catherine, following custom, did not attend. History as we know it today would have been so different had Arthur lived. News of Arthur's death reached Henry II's court on the 4th of April. King Henry was awoken from his sleep and burst into tears at the loss of his firstborn. Grief-stricken and emotional, his wife Queen Elizabeth of York was brought to his chambers so that they could grieve together. Arthur was buried at Worcester Cathedral on the 25th of April 1502. His young bride Catherine did not attend, as was customary at the time. 16-year-old Catherine was now a widow. She would, however, one day become Queen of England when she married her husband's brother, King Henry VIII. A death that changed history. Arthur's death transformed the future of England. Catherine of Aragon later married his younger brother Henry, an arrangement approved only because she insisted her marriage to Arthur had never been consummated. Years later, Henry VIII would use that very question, consummation or not, as the legal and spiritual justification for annulment, sparking the English Reformation and breaking England from Rome. You see, I don't think Rome at the time was the Church of Peter. A legacy of what might have been. Arthur's short life and early death altered the entire course of British history. Had he lived, England might never have seen Henry VIII, the break with the Catholic Church, or the turbulent succession crisis that followed. Instead, Arthur remains one of history's great what-ifs, a prince raised to rule who never got his chance. Richard Neville, 16th Earl of Warwick, the Kingmaker. Born on the 22nd of November 1428, Richard was the son of Richard Neville, 5th Earl of Salisbury, and his wife Alice Montague. The Nevilles were one of the wealthiest landowners outside the royal family. One of his aunts, Cecil Neville, married Richard, Duke of York, father of the sons of York. This meant that Richard Neville was the first cousin of King Edward IV, George, Duke of Clarence, and King Richard III. Now, this guy was the Kingmaker, okay? And the Stanleys, in order to get the Tudors on, had to get rid of this guy. Little is known of Richard's childhood. In 1436, 8-year-old Richard married Lady Anne Beauchamp. The couple would have 2 daughters, Isabel and Anne. Warwick played an important part in mid-15th century English politics. He was called the Kingmaker as he was responsible for helping Edward IV onto the throne in 1461. He attempted to replace King Edward with his brother George and also reinstated Henry VI back on the throne. Then his luck ran out. Initially, the Nevilles were loyal to Henry VI. However, the weakness of the king led to supporting the Duke of York's claim to the throne. Richard Neville fought with the Duke of York at the First Battle of St Albans. The Duke of York and Warwick's father were killed at Wakefield in 1460, and this created a strong bond between their sons. They avenged their respective fathers' deaths at the Battle of Towton in 1461, which secured Edward IV on the throne for the first time. All was going well until Edward's secret marriage with Elizabeth Woodville. Warwick had plans to form an alliance with France by marrying Edward to a French princess. The Woodville family was large and keen for advantageous marriages and positions of authority. Warwick decided the Woodvilles had too much influence on King Edward's. Warwick persuaded Edward's younger brother George, Duke of Clarence, to marry his eldest daughter Isabel. You see, I think this was a battle between the then Church of the Son of Man as this Eastern Byzantine money-lending Venetian shit show, the Church of Peter, were being installed over Europe. And had they not have secured Blighty to that on the Reformation, France and England together, Scotland would never have had a chance because it was just a shitty little shithole full of aggie shaggers. And they would not have secured Europe. But by breaking allegiance between France and England, which is what this was all about as well, this is how they succeeded. And Henry, of course, then was the man. And basically the power of the Church of the Son of Man was further demolished. He then planned to overthrow Edward by placing George and Isabel on the throne. Warwick then supported a rebellion from the north against Edward. Edward was captured, but it proved impossible to rule without the king. Warwick was forced to release King Edward IV in September 1469. Warwick and Clarence started another failed rebellion, and the two of them escaped to France. In France, Warwick formed an alliance with the exiled Margaret of Anjou. The plan was to invade England, restore Henry VI to the throne, and marry Margaret's son Edward of Lancaster to Warwick's younger daughter Anne. Warwick would then have a daughter in both the Yorkist and the Lancastrian camp. Warwick's invasion was initially successful, forcing Edward and Richard of Gloucester into temporary exile with their sister, the Duchess of Burgundy. Warwick's restoration of Henry VI lasted just a few months. Edward gathered his forces and was back in England in March 1471. Now, the Burgundians at the time were a Templar bunch, and the St. Clairs in Scotland, who built Rosslyn Chapel, they had sided with the Burgundians. So the Burgundians at that time, you can say, obviously represented the Solomons. So this is what we can see. There's a clear battle between the Christian Templars and the Solomon Templars. Warwick's restoration of Henry VI lasted just a few months. Edward gathered his forces and was back in England in March 1471. On April the 14th, 1471, the two armies met at Barnet. Fog and poor visibility on the field led to confusion, and the Lancastrian army ended up attacking its own men. In the face of defeat, Warwick attempted to escape the field but was struck off his horse and killed. 42-year-old Warwick's bloodied body was displayed in London's St. Paul Cathedral to quell any rumours of his survival. Warwick's remains were handed over to Archbishop Neville to be buried in the family vault at Bisham Priory in Berkshire. Today, no trace of either the tomb or the church remains. Our group, the Tudor Intruders and More, source Wars of the Roses, Richard Neville, 16th Earl of Warwick. And then we just got a little bit more on this day. 1499, Edward Plantagenet, 17th Earl of Warwick, was executed for treason at the age of 24. The last legitimate male of the Plantagenet line, Edward was the son of George, Duke of Clarence, and Isabel Neville, and a potential Yorkist claimant to the throne during the tumultuous reigns of Richard III and Henry VII. Imprisoned in the Tower of London from childhood, his mere existence posed a threat to Henry VII's rule. After being implicated in an escape plot and the pretender Perkin Warbeck, Edward was tried and beheaded on Tower Hill. His death marked the end of the direct male line of the Plantagenets. There he is. So that I just thought I'd add there because I had said that we'd discuss that, and I've still got the Seven Kingdoms, which we'll do next week. But again, just to support a lot of what I do say in relation to history, and now my grasp on it is certainly completely different to that of the scholars and academics, who, of course, are pushing his story, the victors. But clearly, the Plantagenets were taken over, the Yorkshire's were demolished, and in came this funny bunch called the Tudors. Placated the people because they had Yorkists and Lancastrian and the Tudors together, and the offspring Arthur. But they only had to kill Arthur and put on this Moor-looking Henry VIII. So who are these Moors? Are these Moors the subjugators and subversives in the whole civilized system? Basically, they were North Africans. Is it a lie that they were running Tartaria? And actually, they just presented themselves as that on this fake idea that the Tartarian Empire would run out to Russia. There was no such thing as Russia. There was the Muscovites and there was St. Petersburg. No Russia in them times. It's utter shit, this idea that Tartary would run out to Tartary in Mongol land. Maybe the civilization in the west was called Tartaria, but it had nothing to do with the Russians. That is another blag and propaganda script from this Second Temple priesthood. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll have a quick look at any more additions. Right, where are we? AMG work, no, right, okay. Right, remember also Sean they put on the world, they want for us to manifest, yes. Okay. Right, thanks Mew. British Mewers run England for a couple of centuries. Well, I mean, it's difficult to get across for you, but when I was studying books back in the 90s, you know, history was a big thing, especially the Lancastrians. I was big on studying Lancaster and the War of the Roses, etc. And images that I saw in books back in the day, I just wish I could find my chronology of books that I've read and I could name it, but it was clear there were a lot of data showing that Henry VIII, as a child, looked like a black African. Nothing like any offspring you'd expect from Henry VII, nor indeed Elizabeth of York. They were all gingers. And clearly Arthur was a ginger. He explained that to you. So, again, this is all they see. Families, Venetians. And I do wonder, are the Moors, not as they present themselves today, the leaders that were defeated, are not these subversive assholes that have consistently tried to usurp civilization? On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I will say thank you for joining. Mod Mew, every busy. Thanks for modding. I hope you have a good week, and I shall say, till the next time, if I can find it.
advocate.